When it was the same thing. It'd come up like a, it started like a one-handed,
No, I just walk on and it's on, switched on. I'm the laziest person you'll ever meet. I do nothing,
Angus Young, the little schoolboy with the giant guitar sound, is famous for his non-stop energy and the pure, loud rock and roll of ACDC. While he was quick to call out bands he didn't think were up to scratch, Angus also had a deep love for the music that first sparked his fire. Let's plug in and crank up the volume on the bands Angus Young loved the most. 1. The Yardbirds.
Every band played the Beatles, or some bands played Rolling Stones. We were the Yardbirds band.
Long before Angus Young was electrifying stadiums worldwide with ACDC, his musical tastes were being shaped by the exciting sounds coming out of Britain in the 1960s. Among the bands that truly captured his imagination were the Yardbirds. This wasn't just a passing fancy. Angus specifically pointed to the Yardbirds' greatest hits as one of his all-time favorite albums.
They've become so saturated that they don't really show very much appreciation, even though they are liking it,
For a young, aspiring guitarist, the Yardbirds offered a thrilling mix of blues rock, pop smarts, and groundbreaking guitar work. They were a band that wasn't afraid to experiment, pushing the boundaries of what a rock and roll song could be. Their hits were packed with energy, memorable riffs, and a raw edge that Angus clearly connected with. He would have heard in their music a certain wildness, a refusal to be too polished, which would later become a hallmark of ACDC's own sound.
And you're just learning to play the guitar?
Yes, from a teacher.
From a teacher? Do you play anything except skiffle?
Yes.
A truly defining moment for young Angus was seeing the Yardbirds perform live in Australia. This wasn't just any version of the Yardbirds. It was when the legendary Jimmy Page was their guitarist. Imagine a young Angus Young soaking in the atmosphere, watching Page unleash sounds from his guitar that were innovative and powerful. This experience left a huge mark on him.
I think a lot of it get bored. Certainly when I started, there was a lot of stuff floating around.
To see a band like the Yardbirds, especially with a guitarist of Page's caliber, playing with such force and creativity right in front of him, must have been incredibly inspiring. It would have shown him what was possible with an electric guitar and a rock and roll band. He likely paid close attention to Page's stage presence, his control over feedback, and the sheer excitement the band generated.
Just coming to see us, it was incredible because the reception was amazing and it was incredible.
This live encounter wasn't just a concert. It was a lesson in rock and roll power and the magic of live performance. It fueled his own dreams and showed him the kind of energy he wanted to create with his own music.
That's how we are. I mean, we could never really pose. We were not a posy sort of a band,
The Yardbirds, with their revolving door of iconic guitarists, including Eric Clapton and Jeff Beck before Page, were a hotbed of guitar innovation. And their influence on countless musicians, Angus included, is undeniable. He heard in their greatest hits the raw power of blues mixed with the excitement of rock, a combination he would champion his entire career.
I think it's sort of well known that the three of us came from a county in England called Surrey.
The Yardbirds were known for taking American blues songs and giving them a British rock and roll twist. Angus would have appreciated their energy and how they made these older songs their own. He probably listened to those records over and over, picking out the guitar parts, feeling the raw excitement they captured on vinyl. That early exposure to a band that could be both bluesy and fiercely original helped lay the groundwork for his own musical journey. The Yardbirds showcased how British musicians were reinterpreting American blues, but Angus also deeply admired the bands that stuck even closer to the pure blues source, especially those fronted by a god of the guitar. 2. John Mayall and the Bluesbreakers, with Eric Clapton. If the Yardbirds showed Angus how blues could be rocked up, then John Mayall and the Bluesbreakers, particularly the lineup featuring Eric Clapton, provided him with a masterclass in the pure, unadulterated British blues. Angus Young has specifically named the album Blues Breakers with Eric Clapton, often referred to simply as the Beano album, as an essential record in his collection. This album, released in 1966, is a landmark, a cornerstone of the British blues movement, and it had a massive impact on a whole generation of guitarists, including Angus. For a young man learning his craft, this record was like a sacred text, revealing the power and emotional depth of blues guitar played with passion and precision.
Sort of legendary, famous group like that always being exactly the same. You know, you don't think of people leaving or dropping out.
What Angus would have heard in this album was Eric Clapton's incredible guitar tone, rich, powerful, and singing, often achieved by plugging a Gibson Les Paul into a Marshall amplifier, a combination that would become legendary. Clapton's playing on that record was a revelation. He wasn't just playing notes, he was channeling deep emotion, drawing from.
Extra musical about playing the blues, you just play it the way you feel it, really, and play it very spontaneously.
American blues masters, but adding his own fiery British sensibility. Angus, who always valued feel and tone over flashy, meaningless speed, would have been captivated by Clapton's soulful bends, his tasteful phrasing, and the sheer intensity of his playing. John Mayall, a dedicated blues purist and band leader, created the perfect environment for Clapton to shine, focusing on authentic blues structures and allowing the musicianship to take center stage. This respect for the blues tradition, combined with fiery individual talent, was something Angus deeply admired. Listening to the Beano album, Angus would have absorbed the way Clapton could make a guitar weep on a slow blues or roar on an up-tempo shuffle. It was a lesson in dynamics, in how to build a solo, and how to serve the song while still making a powerful personal statement. This wasn't about tricks or gimmicks. It was about honest, heartfelt expression through the instrument. The raw, live-in-the-studio feel of the album also likely appealed to Angus, who always favored a straightforward, no-nonsense approach to recording with ACDC.
I mean, I'm much better looking at these than Joan Collins.
He would have appreciated the authenticity, the sense that this was a band of skilled musicians playing together with real passion, capturing a moment of blues lightning in a bottle. This album wasn't just influential, it was foundational for many guitarists who wanted to play blues-based rock. It showed them the path, the standard they needed to aim for. For Angus, who often spoke about the importance of blues in his own playing, the Blues Breakers with Eric Clapton album was more than just a collection of songs. It was an education. It demonstrated how the blues could be played with power, intensity, and profound respect for its origins. It was a clear example of how a guitarist could become a true voice, a god even, by mastering the essentials and playing from the heart.
Right, I'm going to play something now, and you go through 100 different changes.
Clapton and Mayall were channeling the spirit of American bluesmen, and Angus also went straight to the source, drawing inspiration from one of the most powerful and influential blues figures of all time. 3. Muddy Waters.
Got scratched and I don't leave it. I have a very expensive guitar was given to me from the...
While British bands like the Yardbirds and the Blues Breakers were reinterpreting American blues, Angus Young also had a deep and abiding respect for the original masters who created the music in the first place. High on that list was Muddy Waters, a true giant of the blues, whose powerful voice and electrifying slide guitar defined the Chicago blues sound. Muddy Waters was a massive influence on Angus, not just as a guitarist, but as a performer who radiated raw adult emotion and undeniable presence. Angus specifically mentioned Muddy Waters' 1977 album, Hard Again, as one of his personal favorites. This is significant because Hard Again, produced by Johnny Winter, was a late-career comeback album for Muddy, showcasing him in a raw, energetic setting with a fantastic band. proving his blues power was as potent as ever.
I'm singing right out of that church and got that big tone. I guess this was white kids, come to see me so often.
What Angus would have loved about Muddy Waters and an album like Hard Again was its undiluted gut-bucket blues essence. There was no pretense, no unnecessary frills, just pure, powerful music rooted in real-life experience. Muddy's voice was like thunder, and his slide guitar playing was both menacing and deeply soulful. The songs often had a driving rhythm, a chugging energy that was a precursor to rock and roll. Angus, whose own music with ACDC was built on strong, unforgettable riffs and a powerful rhythmic drive, would have found a kindred spirit in Muddy Waters' approach.
Ladies and gentlemen, Muddy Waters!
The sound and feel of Muddy's band on records like Hard Again were crucial. These weren't just backing musicians, they were an integral part of the blues conversation, laying down grooves that were both hypnotic and intensely alive. This aural texture, the way the whole band locked in, was something Angus would have deeply appreciated, as ACDC's power always came from the unified punch of the entire group, especially the rhythm section. Listening to Muddy Waters, Angus would have connected with the raw honesty and the storytelling. Blues music, at its heart, is about conveying emotion, and Muddy was a master of it. Whether singing about hard times, love, or just the need to have a good time, his delivery was always believable and compelling.
That's what I'm saying. That tone is the feeling. You got the feeling in there to this gift.
This authenticity was something Angus always valued. He hated fakeness in music, and Muddy Waters was as real as it got. The raw energy, the slightly distorted guitar tones that often characterized Chicago blues, the powerful harmonica playing that frequently accompanied Muddy. All these elements contributed to a sound that was both tough and deeply human. It was music that didn't just make you want to tap your foot, it made you feel something deep down. Muddy Waters laid down the blues foundation, and the next band Angus admired took that American art form, supercharged it with British rock energy, and strutted it onto the world's biggest stages. 4. The Rolling Stones. If Muddy Waters was the deep, earthy root of the blues, then the Rolling Stones were one of the first and most exciting branches to sprout from it, taking that raw American music and infusing it with a uniquely British rock and roll swagger. Angus Young, a dedicated student of all things blues and early rock, held the Rolling Stones in high regard.
I mean, this in the early days, this sort of thing did give us a very fanatical hardcore of fans who would defend us through thick and thin.
He frequently mentioned them when discussing great live bands that had a real and lasting impact, not just on him, but on the entire landscape of rock music. For Angus, the Stones represented a perfect blend of blues authenticity, rock and roll rebellion, and an unbeatable live energy, qualities that ACDC themselves would come to embody. What Angus undoubtedly loved about the Rolling Stones was their raw, blues-soaked sound, especially in their early and classic periods. They weren't just playing rock and roll, they were channeling the spirit of Chuck Berry, Bo Diddley, and Muddy Waters, but doing it with their own sneering, youthful intensity.
The water you drink, the food you eat, and then there's the Rolling Stones, and I guess we're just part of the furniture, you know?
Keith Richards and Brian Jones, and later Mick Taylor's and Ronnie Wood's, intertwined guitar work created a distinctive gritty texture, full of memorable riffs and a loose yet powerful groove. This was a far cry from polished pop music. It was earthy, a bit dangerous, and incredibly exciting. Angus, a riff master himself, would have deeply appreciated the simple yet effective guitar lines that drove so many classic Stones tracks. He would have recognized that same commitment to the power of a great riff, the kind that grabs you instantly and doesn't let go.
This is my main man. As you'll notice, he's only got 5 strings, because I'm too tight.
Beyond the records, the Rolling Stones' reputation as a phenomenal live act was a key reason for Angus's admiration. He knew that capturing energy on vinyl was one thing, but delivering it night after night on stage was the true test of a rock and roll band. The Stones, with Mick Jagger's iconic stage presence, strutting, preening, and commanding the audience, were masters of the live arena. They had a certain raw, almost chaotic energy on stage that was undeniably captivating.
I felt that about Brian. I mean, everybody did, and everybody knew that. Even Brian felt it, that he wasn't going to be around that long.
This wasn't a perfectly choreographed performance. It felt real, alive, and a little unpredictable, all qualities that Angus valued. ACDC, too, would become legendary for their high-octane, no-holds-barred live shows, and seeing a band like the Stones conquer audiences with such raw power and charisma would have been both an inspiration and an affirmation of his own musical path. Angus often spoke about the importance of a band having its own sound and attitude, and the Rolling Stones had that in spades. They weren't trying to be anyone else, they were unapologetically themselves, the rebellious bad boys of rock.
When they look really miserable, I get a bit...
Sometimes they faint.
Yes, they fainted a lot yesterday, which was very disappointing.
This authenticity, this commitment to their own identity, would have resonated strongly with Angus, who, with ACDC, carved out a unique and instantly recognizable sound that brooked no compromise. The Rolling Stones brought a raw, bluesy swagger to arenas, and another British band took that live energy to an even more explosive and theatrical level, something Angus also deeply respected.
You just carry on, Russell. Go on.
5. The Who. While the Rolling Stones brought a sneering, blues-drenched cool to the stage, another British band, The Who, took live rock and roll performance to a whole new level of explosive energy and theatrical power. Angus Young, who always prized bands that could deliver an unforgettable high-impact live show, often pointed to The Who as a prime example of a great lasting live act.
This is one of the great things about rock and roll music, is that it's never the same.
Their influence on ACDC's stage presence and powerful musical approach is undeniable. For Angus, The Who weren't just playing songs, they were creating an event, a full-blown rock and roll spectacle that was both musically powerful and visually stunning.
It's taken a lot of getting over that one. I still can't articulate very well on how I feel.
What Angus would have admired immensely about The Who was their sheer, unadulterated power and on-stage intensity. Pete Townshend's windmilling guitar chords, Keith Moon's chaotic and brilliant drumming, John Entwistle's thundering bass lines, and Roger Daltrey's commanding stage presence as a frontman, all combined to create a sound and a show that was unlike anything else.
Quite out of control, I mean, amazingly drunk.
They were loud, they were aggressive, and they were incredibly exciting. This wasn't polite rock and roll, this was assault, delivered with a theatrical flair that included smashing instruments at the end of their sets. This act of destruction, while controversial, was a powerful statement about the raw, untamed energy of rock music, a sentiment Angus, known for his own wild stage antics, could surely appreciate. He understood that a great rock show was about more than just playing the songs correctly. It was about creating a memorable experience, about giving the audience something to talk about for years to come. The Who's music itself, with its powerful anthems like My Generation and Won't Get Fooled Again, this resonated with the working-class themes and raw energy that ACDC would later champion. Angus likely saw in The Who a band that managed to be both musically inventive and incredibly direct. Pete Townshend was a master of the power chord and a brilliant songwriter who could capture big ideas and emotions in his songs. The way The Who could build a song from a quiet start to a massive, explosive finish was a lesson in dynamics that any rock musician could learn from. Their ability to fill stadiums with sound and energy was something ACDC would also become famous for.
Are you Australian?
Yeah, that's right.
I don't want anything to do with you Australian faggots. Now, will you please leave me alone?
The Who demonstrated an almost violent on-stage energy, and yet another band, featuring a guitarist Angus had admired since his youth, would take heavy, blues-based rock to monumental, almost mythical proportions. Sixth, Led Zeppelin. While ACDC forged a path that was uniquely their own, direct and fiercely stripped down, the musical world they emerged from was heavily influenced by the blues-based heavy rock titans of the late 1960s and early 70s. Among these giants was Led Zeppelin, a band whose monumental sound and blues-infused epics left an indelible mark on hard rock.
We're all busy, and it's not the be-all and end-all of everything. It's just what we love and what we may love in the future.
Though Angus Young often had sharp criticisms for bands he felt didn't deliver live or strayed from true rock principles, his respect for the musicianship within Led Zeppelin, particularly the guitar work of Jimmy Page, was evident. Page, after all, was the guitarist Angus had seen perform with the Yardbirds in Australia, an experience that had made a significant early impression on him.
And that was exactly kind of how we'd started off.
What Angus would have admired in Jimmy Page's playing, both with the Yardbirds and definitively with Led Zeppelin, was his innovation, his mastery of riffs, and his deep understanding of blues language, even as he pushed it into new, heavier territories. Page was an architect of sound, building colossal tracks layer by layer in the studio, and capable of unleashing ferocious solos live.
Do you get four musicians who are really, really, I mean, you know, the top, the creme de la creme?
Angus, a fellow Gibson Les Paul enthusiast for much of his iconic sound, would have appreciated Page's ability to coax a vast range of tones and textures from his instrument. From delicate acoustic passages to thunderous power chords, Page's guitar work was a driving force, and his riffs, from Whole Lotta Love to Kashmir, were legendary. As a fellow riffsmith, Angus would have recognized and respected that foundational skill. The blues was always the bedrock for ACDC, and Led Zeppelin, for all their epic scope and mystical themes, were also deeply rooted in the blues. This shared foundation provided a point of connection. While Angus might have found some of Led Zeppelin's lengthy improvisations or more fantastical lyrical themes less to his personal taste, as suggested by his criticisms of their live shows in other contexts, the raw power and the blues rock core of their best work were undeniable. He understood the impact of a great heavy guitar riff, and Led Zeppelin delivered those in abundance. The sheer weight and power of their sound, especially in their early albums, helped define what hard rock could be, even if they chose to express that power in a more direct, less ornate fashion.
I'm sure you've been offered a great deal of money.
Are you still on about it now?
Yeah.
Oh, what a shame, he was doing so well.
Angus's admiration for Page wasn't just about technical skill. It was also about the ability to create something iconic and lasting. Page wasn't just playing the guitar. He was crafting soundscapes, producing the records, and steering the musical vision of one of the biggest bands in the world. This level of artistry and control was something to be respected. Angus Young's musical loves reveal his core values: blues roots, raw energy, and masterful guitar work. Are these your favorite artists as well? Tell us what you think, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.